The earlier offline indirect tax filing system was not easy for CFOs, but neither is GST, a fully e-filing system. Though GST has streamlined the tax filing process, it is still a tough task for CFOs. The next panel will explore what will make GST sustainable in the future. What kind of changes are required for the nation's biggest tax reform? I would like to invite Amol Dete, editor ET-CFO, to moderate the panel discussion on the future of GST, mystery or mirage. Platform is all yours, Amol.
Good to see you and thank you so much for your participation. On one hand, the GST collection has grown despite the pandemic, except a downfall in one few months. And it looks like the whole GST process is very transparent and keeps India ahead. But on the other hand, there are many obstacles, such as filing GST every month, compliance burden, matching input credit, obtaining GST refunds. Along with this, the debate over the share of GST collection given to states. All this put together, the question is, what is the future of GST? Is it a mystery or a mirage? I'm going to explore the same with the experts on the subject here today. But before we begin, let me suggest you to please post your questions and feedback on the comment box on your right side, and also share your thoughts on the social media using a hashtag ETCFO Turning Point. So let's begin. The future of GST, is it the mystery or a mirage? And I have four speakers with me. My first speaker is Ms. Neetu Kashiramka, the CFO of VIP Industries. Ms. Kashiramka, glad to have you.
Hi.
My next speaker is Mr. Kalishwaran Arunachalam, the CFO of Eicher Motors. Mr. Arunachalam, glad to have you. My next speaker is Mr. Achit Gupta, the founder and CEO of ClearTax. Mr. Gupta, glad to have you. And my next speaker is Mr. Kamlesh Vikamsi, the ex-president ICI. Mr. Vikamsi, glad to have you as well.
Pleasure.
So to begin with, ladies and gentlemen, my first question is, crafted on the basis of the headline or the title of the discussion. And Ms. Kashiramka, I will shoot this question to you. I mean, this question is for all of you. How do you see the future of GST? According to you, is it a mystery or a mirage?
I definitely think it is a mirage. Earlier, to manage so many laws, now it has been consolidated into GST. So definitely it is much, much better. A few more years of experience and smoothness, I think it will definitely be much, much better is what I believe. Because earlier we had excise, we had sales tax, various. So definitely one tax across is definitely a boon for the industry as well as for the professionals.
Okay. Mr. Arunachalam?
Really like the way you faced the question by saying whether it's a mystery or a mirage. I think if you look back at history, this is a reform that has been in discussion for decades. Early 2000, mid 2000 is when the journey of consolidation started. Eventually, we had multiple rounds of discussion. We started by saying we would like to have a one nation, one tax. But then we finally launched in 1st of July 2017, a GST came into force. As much as we wanted to make it smoother and easier, we also need to keep in mind this is a union government that is a combination of various states putting together and constituting India. So there are going to be challenges when a reform of this size is getting implemented. But having said that, the way I look at it is the long term seems to be really, really positive. There are opportunities to smoothen some of the glitches that we have, ensure that the technical side is much more robust and stronger. There are few goods which is still outside the GST purview. The moment we have consensus around it, we can get that in. But those are opportunities that is always there when you have a reform of this size that comes into the country. I do believe this is a step in the right direction. This is also ensuring that there is a visibility on how much we are able to collect on the indirect tax side. And we could see post-pandemic, after a lull, it has now started to pick up also. I believe the direction is right, the efforts are right, And as a country, this is one of the biggest reform that we have ever launched, and this will give us the right benefits in the long run.
Okay, noted. Mr. Vikamsi.
So to my mind, I think it is neither a mystery nor a mirage.
Okay.
Whether you like it or not, we have to live with it. But having said that, I must appreciate, and my predecessors speakers have already mentioned, that on the drawing board, the GST was a fantastic tax based on a technology platform which the government wanted to implement, merging all the 2930 indirect taxes together and making it seamless to be on technology platform. Implementation of the GST has its own challenges on the technology platform. So as we go through this particular session, we will point out to you the what was envisaged in the drawing board and what ultimately has come about and where the GST should actually be. So I would put it that GST is a reality, and I'm very positive on GST that having implemented GST and making it more technology oriented and removing all the glitches, I think will make it a good indirect tax.
Oh, sure. Noted your points, Mr. Vikamsi. Mr. Gupta.
The technology aspect of it. This is a completely digital tax, if you will. The entire 12 million businesses, which are 1.2 crore businesses of our country, which are registered in GST, have to do this end-to-end digitally. And the technological simplification and implementation simplification that this journey needs, that is happening. And in the next few years, it will keep getting simpler, progressively easier for businesses to comply. And I think this has been massive changes in terms of innovation, technology breakthroughs, digitization of businesses, right? Small and medium businesses digitizing for the first time due to this, due to the implementation design, due to the thought process, electronic invoicing becoming a reality in a country like ours, which I would not have visualized and thought about like in 2016, 2017 when this was getting rolled out. This will lead to digitization of business to business interaction. It furthers the agenda of nation's digitization with GST, e-invoicing, UPI, Aadhaar. A lot of initiatives our country does at a national infrastructure level, and I feel as a nation we are much ahead of the world on this. So overall, like there'll be more second order effects which come just from the national tax reform of one nation, one tax. Business can happen anywhere. There'll be second order effects driven by digitization and also the pandemic, which is making people evaluate outcomes and opportunities much further. The tax has digitized, so your first rails is digital. After that, there is so much innovation which is possible, which will come. So that part is very exciting, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gupta. I think different views here, and I'm sure the conversation is going to be far more interesting now. So, Ms. Kashiramka, I will come back to you. And if you could tell me the challenges that the CFOs are facing today. It's been 5 years. Obviously, the government has made many changes in the GST. In fact, everybody complimented the government and its speed, the way they were, amending the new laws and the changes and everything, and they were explaining. But 5 years down the line, if I ask you specifically as a CFO, what are the further simplifications that you are looking for, maybe in compliance, maybe in regulations?
I think one biggest thing is on having a better infrastructure, same thing digitally. Because today what happens, if you are filing various returns just closer to the due dates, then the system is getting hanged, it will get shut down. So that is the biggest problem. But I think Archit and his company is doing a great job. I have been using them in both my organizations for last 4-5 years, and it's a wonderful support, I think, which we are getting. But yes, they need to do work on the infra and make it more smoother. Today, it's like more data, then some troubles are coming. That is something which definitely needs some improvement there.
Okay, let me get another CFO perspective here. So what is that you want into simplification, specifically into compliance and regulations, Mr. Arunachalam?
Yeah, so here let me try to give a few specific examples on what are the things that we would like to see. Today, if you take the input tax credit eligibility for a buyer, somewhere it is linked to non-compliance of a supplier too, where my input tax credit can get impacted. Eventually, I think the country is moving towards a trust-based system in the long run. And these are things, it will be really, really good if the onus is removed from the buyer. Second is, can we also look at simplifying the tax structures, mainly on the inward tax structure? What happens is, if there is a mismatch between your input and output rate being lower, you tend to accumulate a lot of input tax credit that impacts the working capital of the company. So can we look at those gaps getting minimized? Will really make it even more faster and accurate. It's not about working capital getting stuck. I would also believe it will become much more inclusive for more people to come onto this. While we know that also this entire multiple GST registrations by state level cannot be done away with, considering our overall GST structure, it will also be amenable if we can start moving this towards compliance procedures at a central level and the central authority level. So at least the touch point is one, even though you have many more state registration that comes in. So these are 2 or 3 examples that I thought I would share, which can help us to simplify compliance.
Okay, thank you for that, note. Mr. Vikamsi, I will come to you. You spoke about the reality and the technical glitches. Could you tell me, obviously the GST Council have been having, have regular meetings and trying to do their best to improve the infrastructure and all. But if I ask you, how should the GST Council strengthen its mechanism, maybe to address the industry issues, stakeholder issues?
The GST Council started on a very good platform because there was consensus amongst the center and the states on whatever decisions were being taken. Of late, what we have seen is that there is politics which has crept into the GST Council as well, which is not a very healthy sign. And they must meet more often, in fact, because several issues of industry and service industry, which need to be ironed out and which takes a lot of time before they are addressed by the GST Council. Very important that they meet periodically, number one. Number two, they have formed some groups, 20 groups, odd groups, which are for specific industries. Now, those groups must work for the betterment of the entire GST structure. And that takes me to the, design, what I mentioned in the opening remarks, that the entire design of GST was that the input credit should be seamless. Now, what is the meaning of that? That each entity files their own GSTR1, which is all the invoices they upload on the portal. Based on that, the input credit is given to the consumer of that particular goods or service. Now, what has happened today is that there is no invoice matching. And as Mr. Kalisuran rightly pointed out, the onus is now shifted on the person who's claiming input credit. He's being denied input credit. Actually, it should be the other way around. If I paid the tax to the opposite party, and if the opposite party has not paid the government must go after him. It's the other way around today. But that whole entire design earlier was that everybody would file their invoices. And if I don't see a particular invoice of my supplier, I can add that particular invoice. And the government will go after that person, saying that X is claiming, input credit, but you're not giving input, you're not, filed your, and therefore you go after them. But it's now the reverse, completely the reverse. The onus has shifted on the,
buyer
claiming input credit, which is completely wrong. And by design, it is completely wrong. The thought was that, go after the people who are not complying with the GST and not the people who are complying and who are claiming input credit. So these kind of, issues should be ironed out, and they should be immediately addressed by the GST Council, because ultimately we should go back to the, drawing board and see that, whatever the earlier intended purpose was of GST should be brought back to it in its full form. And there are several examples of that, like many a times input credit is denied. There's a reverse charge of input credit. The list is going on increasing. Now, why reverse charge? Because ultimately it throws onus again on me as a service consumer or a goods consumer to do the compliance and unnecessary accounting, payment of tax, claim that again input credit immediately. So all those things, should be removed, because this is unnecessarily, it gives no benefit to the government as well as it's unnecessary burden on the industry. So, these things should be ironed out, and such matters should be immediately addressed by the GST Council.
And this is like punishing people who are actually complying.
Right. I mean, Ms. Kashiramka, do you also feel that GST refund is a major issue, major obstacle, because companies have been asking for it and they're not getting the refunds for
It
months?
takes time.
Mhm.
So it is not at the same speed at which we expect, because since we are saying everything is digitized, we have filed a return, then why there should be a delay? Because everything is transparent, right? It is
Yes.
all visible. Then
True.
why should somebody take time?
Okay.
But yes, it's like bureaucratism there also, and therefore time is something which we are losing, and therefore working capital blockage.
Yes. I think that is a major problem
Yes.
with the small businesses, at least
And
large
also in
businesses.
some cases, as Mr. Kalishram mentioned,
Huh.
like their input tax is 18%, and if the output is only 12 or even less, then they get so much of accumulated GST and they have to go for refunds. So for them, it's a big working capital issue.
True, true.
I
And
know
I
an
think,
example, it was like electric vehicles.
yes.
I have seen this myself. We had a startup till last year, and it
Hmm.
was a big problem. Every month we had to do this refund.
True, true. Let me get Mr. Gupta here. Maybe he could offer some tech perspective. Mr. Gupta, what is the view that you get from the CFOs? I mean, you heard, the CFOs talking about the challenges. What is the industry view that you get in terms of the challenges? And is there any way that the technology can solve these issues?
Amol, that's a great point the panel has been sharing, right? The number one thing feedback we get is on the tax credits, the input tax credits, right? Businesses have to do a lot of work to manage working capital on the input tax credit side, because there's also nuances to this, and I'll just share for a minute. Like majority of suppliers tend to be the long tail suppliers, tend to be small for the industry. They are on a quarterly scheme of filing and quarterly compliance. Some suppliers are on monthly compliance. Tracking this input tax credit invoice by invoice has now shifted to the buyer. And working capital wise, like you have to, the CFOs have to really figure out like when are they paying, what are they paying, are they able to recover? So the long tail suppliers, which are not maybe fully digital, or the one-time suppliers, which may not, there may be not enough influence. These are real challenges. We have seen the last 7-8% of input tax credit sometimes not getting recovered, right? So this has impact on digitization and automation around payments. How much do you pay? Do you pay the entire amount? What contracts do you do with your vendors? Do you tell them like we will pay you the amount, but modulo GST, that GST amount will pay only after you do the compliance? So these are like real questions which we are seeing, because the industry has to adapt to the law. Now, as Mr. Vikamse said, it's a real point. Like while the implementation can be different and there can be a journey, but we have to deal with what we have got, the hand we have dealt with by the policy, right? So in that, like there's a lot of stress, because there are two, three things, right? Vendors and suppliers are a key ecosystem partner for a CFO, because they are the ones who are supplying goods and services. So blanket policies don't work. And there is a lot of technology automation which gets missed out, because we have seen the tax team and the accounts payable teams are in so much stress because the tax credits keep piling up for recovery, and there's a lot of focus, there's so many manpower people deployed, and the stress which accumulates up to the tax teams, the AP teams, follow-ups with vendors and what have you. That's number one. Second, on the small business side, like we have observed, like the suppliers themselves get, like there's constant change in the GST return forms schemes. First we started with GSTR 123, that got changed. Now there is some new PMT 08 QRMP schemes and all of that. There was some Annex 1, Annex 2 which was coming out. So there's like, from the supplier point of view, which will generally be like the bigger suppliers are fine. The smaller suppliers, there's a lot of work and digitization elements have to reach there also. So that would be my our understanding of from CFOs. Some aspects of policy continuity, stability, a little more clarity for the next year roadmap, etc., needs to also be laid down much faster. I feel like GST council to council, there is clarity which comes, but we are not laying down as a nation a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year roadmap that this is where we are headed. And if that comes out very clearly, the leaders, the finance leaders can plan accordingly. CFOs can plan accordingly. And so that I feel is one more element that we need.
Noted points, Mr. Gupta. So, Mr. Arunachalam, considering the current situation, where the industry has been asking for some rebate, some concession, some reduction in the GST rates. What is your view for specifically from the automobile industry, in terms of reducing the GST tax, and how will it actually benefit during the current time?
For us, if there is only one specific ask that I would have in terms of automobile industry is today, the vehicles are categorized in a different segment, and it's categorized by the cubic capacity of the engine. So while 28% is the taxation that you have, the moment we go after 350cc, we get an additional tax of 3%. That's a significant burden. Eventually, our customers are also typically using the vehicle for commute, while it's a lifestyle brand. That 3% on a business like us, it is really, really painful for them. So I would really urge the government to see we have evenness of taxation on two-wheelers. And also, these are products that are made in India, right? So in line with the government's initiative of Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are trying to ensure that it's not a product that's tied up with a foreign collaborator or it is imported from outside. It's kind of built, designed out, made out in India. In that sense, we think it will be good to have a similar ground with other players and taxes at 28% and not have the additional 3% tax on this. That would be my one specific request from an automobile industry perspective.
Okay, Ms. Kashiramka, you also belong to a sector which is hit badly due to the pandemic. So what kind of rebate or relaxation that you are looking for? Because tourism industry has also pitched Government of India specifically in terms of various relaxations. So will some concession in the compilation or the relaxation in the taxation of GST will help you? If yes, could you please elaborate?
See, any reduction in tax will definitely help, but we are finance professional. We also understand the government is also having a lot of pressure because their collections will get impacted. But something which they can do around GST, because this is a GST session, what I can say that the same thing, if they can, ease the process of refund, if they can ease the entire process, I think that is something which will be helpful. I'm not saying that tax should become 12% from tomorrow, because that is something which government will also have pressure and they also have their own, limitations. So, but yes, when it was a different taxes, our tax used to be 22, 23. Therefore, from that point of view, today it is at 18. So we definitely got benefited from this consolidation. So we don't want to become greedy and say that from tomorrow, let it become 12%. I think then it won't be a right ask.
I think very rational thoughts, Ms. Kashiramka. Mr. Vikamsi, I will come back to you specifically on the state and the center debates. States had their opposition even before GST came into the picture, but somehow they merged, they managed, and now states are there. But now the major argument or the debate is this, that most of the states believe that, they are generating more tax or they're collecting more tax, but the distribution is gone to some other tax, other states. What is the resolution here? What is the solution that you see, Mr. Vikamsi, here? Because the debate between state and center is really going to a different level today.
So Amol, I think this is more of politics than facts. Because if you see the facts, the data which is captured by the taxpayers filing their returns, it's a destination-based tax. The destination state must get the revenue. That's clear right from the beginning. And that's the fact. Because and it's clearly captured in the taxpayer when they file the return. So it's a fallacious argument when the states would say that, my tax is going X state tax is going to Y state. It's completely fallacious. I think if you want, you can improve the technology platform to capture it more better. But I personally feel that, that argument is completely, fallacious. Now it's a different aspect that, the states have started innovating and, levying their own taxes, which I'm afraid is not a very good route to go, because originally the tax was envisaged as one nation, one tax. Now if we have multiple tax like earlier, multiple rates. And let me give you an example. Kerala, for example, maybe a genuine thing. I'm not suggesting for a moment that it's not genuine. Flood tax, they had said a flood cess, which was levied over and above the GST for a particular state, Kerala. Now, be that as it may be a very genuine cause for which the cess was levied. But if that multiplies amongst various states into different things, then you have a plethora of problems, because number one, compliances will go up. Number two, keeping track. Number three, changing the systems, as Archit very rightly pointed out, IT systems to modify. train your people to comply with the new law, and then you have dates and all, applicable from this date to this date. So these are multiple issues which the states and the center must keep in mind, that not to complicate the tax law further unnecessarily unless it is absolutely required. So, answering your question, there is no, confusion between which states would get the tax, and therefore the fact that, one state saying that the other one is getting the tax revenue is completely fallacious, according to me.
Mr. Gupta, you want to add something here in terms of the sector specific challenges, because you will have a different clients, okay? You will have a different versions of everyone. And there are multiple challenges. Every CFO, every company will have a different challenges over there, specifically with the GST.
Right. So at a broad based, Amol, so sector specific, I mean, as various members have pointed out, like there tends to be reverse charge, which is like sometimes scope is expanding, specific like tax rate differentials between input, output, and so on and so forth, which the esteemed panel has already pointed out. Specific things like we have seen with the rollout of electronic invoicing, electronic wages, technology systems had to be upgraded, adopted, led to a lot of setup costs and time and energy and digitization efforts on there. The second one is like the continued energy and efforts on like educating the supplier base, handling that. The third one is like what we have heard from our ecosystem has been like, as there has been policy rollout, then the technology rollout. The policy rollout, technology rollout from the systems perspective, which the government has rolled out, have not been at the same time, same consistency, and there's been a lot of policy flux. During this window, when notices and tax notices, GST notices have come, on that time, it's like, it's very, very unclear and how to comply, how to respond to these. It's like, it feels very, very onerous on the customer, on the CFO, on the tax team, because everything was changing, systems were changing, everything is new, and you are going back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years and asking for, hey, you need to, this data is not matching, this is not happening. So all of that is leading to like a lot of stress, trust gap, and what have you. Like there has to be a window where the proceedings are much more friendlier and not create more stress for the professionals at the CFO level, at the tax team levels, and what have you.
Okay, so yes, there are a lot of challenges also, and maybe government or GST Council should meet more often and resolve those issues. That is one part of it. But what I would like to also learn from you, and specifically Mr. Arunachalan and Ms. Kashiramka, is what is the biggest benefit of GST that you have got? Because I still remember since last decade, the people specifically from the manufacturing sector used to talk about, oh, we waste a lot of petrol or diesel or fuel at the checkposts. And because of checkposts, this is what is happening. Because of indirect tax, this is what is happening. And all those arguments have, are no more today because the world has changed. There are no more checkposts. So, Ms. Kashiramka, what is the biggest benefit that you have got because of GST? And one more aspect is, when you look at the compliance, is it far more easy now compared to what you used to do for indirect taxes, considering the challenges that you are facing?
Definitely, yes, it is better, because in the past we had to deal with so many authorities, different authorities dealing with different excise people. Like if we have more manufacturing units, then it was a more burden, because every state will have different excise people and they will behave differently. So I think definitely it is much better in the GST regime. So one, there is a benefit in the overall cost, but other than that, I think ease of operation is also better in GST as compared to what it was in the past. But as Mr. Kamlesh said, that the blueprint or the drawing board was still much far better. So we are definitely looking at that piece. So it can be still better. I would say that 50% of our problems can get resolved if definitely people look at the drawing board and go back to where they wanted to be.
So, Mr. Vikamsi, I will come back to you. And my question is specifically about the sectors which are complaining now because they were not part of GST. For example, an insurance sector. And give me your observations here or your perspective here, how to resolve such issues, because they claim, there are many such sectors. For example, this sector claims that they used to pay only 12%, 12.36 or not more than 40% service tax earlier, which now they pay 18%. So it's a burden for them, which is also impacting on their businesses. So what is the alternative here?
No, I think the complaint is not justified from an industry point of view because the standard 4 rates which have been prescribed and they're working on those rates. So you cannot expect a different rate for a particular industry as such.
Right.
And plus you get input credit, seamless, as Neetu very rightly pointed out, that you get all your input. Earlier you never used to get, many indirect taxes were cascading actually. You never used to get input credit, but now you're getting input credit. So there should be nothing to complain about. But having said that, again, I go back to the drawing board. The drawing board was that everything should come, all indirect come under GST. Sorry to say that still petroleum is not under GST, despite the fact that, so many years have passed. And the government efforts, both the central and state government efforts, should be that to bring it quickly under GST. These are things which make it the GST not very perfect. And therefore, the attempt should be that keep on refining it and bringing it more and more closer to where it was intended earlier. To make, namely that all indirect taxes folded under GST and input credit seamless and, completely on a technological platform. And it should be, no friction between the administration and the industry as such. Having said that, a couple of things which I would like to, mention is about the service providers. Earlier, the service providers were under service tax.
Right.
Therefore, they had only one registration across the country. But now, under the GST regime, each state they have to have a different registration. This also can be addressed through a technology platform. Archit is there; he's an expert on technology. Now, why don't we devise a method by virtue of which one has to take only one registration, file only one return, and capture all the data which is required by the government for their sharing purpose between center and states and so on and so forth. It can be done, certainly done. I think one should really, dream for that, rather than, even for the manufacturing as such. But manufacturing, of course, had multiple registrations across various states. So they don't complain. But if you make it into one, now imagine if you make even the manufacturing into one and central data to be provided in one return, it would go a very long way in, reducing the burden on the industry as well as the government getting its revenue and sharing its revenue between center and states.
Valid point. So, Mr. Gupta, what is the solution here? How easy or how difficult it is to get this done?
I think, as Mr. Vikram said, it's eminently possible.
Okay.
And I'll give examples why, right? On our platform, for example, we are now aggregating the technologically, like everything at a PAN level. So across different states, so all you have to do is, like on our platform, if you integrate or you send data to us or manually or technologically, all you have to do is give us data at an operating level. And we will cut a slice, dice it at a GST level or a state level and what have you. It's our problem. It's our technology problem. So now that is an advantage, obviously, we offer. That's why customers prefer us. But can the same innovation be done at the national level? Yes. I mean, if one platform can do it, like all platforms can do it. So we offer like PAN level filing, PAN level data ingestion, PAN level reconciliations, PAN level reporting. So, I mean, a business is happening PAN nationwide, right? The classical example is services. Services businesses, like whenever we talk to services businesses, they feel very annoyed because in the erstwhile service tax regime, life was very simple. One registration, once in 6 months. Now they have to, like we know services businesses which went from one registration to 24 registrations, once in 6 months to now every month. So, I mean, the compliance burden is multifold, and that's where technology comes in, and whatever the implementation is, it is the implementation. So I think like one of the things I feel can really change, which we have headed in the right direction, but we need to start accelerating, is electronic invoicing, which is what that is doing is like it is asking everybody to real-time invoice. And so what that does is it actually, if the entire ecosystem is electronically invoicing, at some point you can just automatically create the tax returns and you can automatically issue refunds or you can automatically account for tax credits. And so that movement, if it heads into its logical conclusion that the rollout has been smarter because they've rolled it out in phases and they are continuously slowly rolling it out. But as it spreads to smaller businesses, as it spreads to B2C invoices across the country, I think it will bring the burden down, because then you can say like, yes, if you have just electronically invoiced, everything is done. As citizens, you can just pay the tax and be done with it. Like, so I think that could be a major movement, positive movement.
If I could add, while we
Mhm.
talked about the benefits, which is logistics and vendor led, the thing that I would see is when do we? It's actually goes back to your first question by saying as to is GST a mystery or a mirage.
Mm.
The real answer for that is as to when do we go and take the call that it's going to be one nation, one tax. So when I say one nation, one tax, it's not in form but in spirit. Therefore, how do you decide the power and autonomy of the state governments in terms of how do they want to operate and how do they want to go about it? Today, right from even filing a form at a state level to taking a registration, somewhere it is all linked to the autonomy that the state wants to have, which is where the dispute that comes in terms of the revenue sharing that we talked about. And then it goes to the entire combination of bunch of states claiming to be one that generates revenue, and there is bunch of states that takes up the revenue for the usage in the respective states. So in all this, I think if we can have a real one nation, one tax, as in form and spirit, which makes it much more simpler and it folds everything into one. Two, it will also ensure that there is no sub-taxes, etc., that is levied by various other states suo motu. Three, things like petroleum, Mr. Vikram was referring, gets covered under GST. So we have no loss of tax in the entire value chain. Just because the state wants to have revenue, eventually what states needs is a visibility on the compensation and an adherence to the compensation that they need to get in terms of the revenue that goes through. It's a destination tax at the end of the day. Four, once we complete all these things, I think e-invoicing today is a great step by the government. If we can complete all the technical glitches that we have today and make it even more user friendly, I don't think so. It'll neither be a mystery or a mirage. It'll be a marvel, and probably that's the direction that we need to move towards.
Okay, very well summarized, Mr. Arunachalam. Mr. Vikamsi, one more question I have is specifically on the where the GST is. I mean, what GST has been covered. When you look at few countries, obviously where the common tax is there, like GST, what they have done is they have specifically kept the entrepreneurs and startups away, or the people with maybe small incomes. So our starting income was 20 lakh when GST is there. And 20 lakh, considering, for a startup or an entrepreneur, is not a huge amount. So anybody who starts earning not more than 2 lakh rupees per month has to invest a lot of time filing a GST. Do you think this can be rationalized? Do you think that this number can be actually extended and, so that the people, those who are earning more, or at least a bit mature startups, will fall into this taxation radar and not in anybody and everybody who just wants to start a business?
So I'm completely with you. So any form of tax must look at cost benefit which the nation gets. So you should not, put in so much of cost on the entrepreneurs that whatever revenues you are generating out of that, overtakes them. So one has to really balance between the two. So as a on a macro level, the government must think how to, remove these small taxpayers from the net, and only people who are, paying substantial tax or paying reasonable amount of tax, which, outweighs the benefit which you give for, non-compliance or for not complying with those laws. So one has to really weigh and, come out. So again, to your question whether 20 lakhs is realistic or not realistic is a view which must be taken based on today's time and looking at, what the value and startup, industry, you very rightly pointed out that their compliance burden initially should be less because they are innovators. So give them time to innovate rather than do all these government compliances all the time. And they are technocrats. So don't, kill them in the bud. Let them grow big. Once they grow big, they will start paying taxes, be it GST, income tax, or whatever. So, one has to really look at the entire ecosystem and what is it you're trying to promote. If you're trying to promote entrepreneurship, please exempt them in the beginning, compliance.
Exactly.
Them. Find out ways and mechanisms of doing that so that they grow big. Once they grow big, they'll automatically come in the net. So that should be the approach of the, of the government.
Mr. Gupta, you want to add something?
Yeah,
Because
I
you
want to
must,
add to that.
first you are a startup. Second, there will be a lot of people who will be coming to you,
Yeah, I definitely want to add to that side. Like I think like offering some window where the compliance burden is less, maybe in the first few years of incorporation, the limits as you guys were discussing, 20 lakh or some other number. The other point is like 2-3 points, right? One is like if you are trying to sell online, which due to COVID and multiple tailwinds of selling digitally with more platforms emerging and pandemic and other things. Now, selling online, you need a GST registration, and like even if you're just starting out and trying to run experiments in a small business, so either you be non-compliant and you try those experiments, or and like if you're the larger e-commerce platforms, they cannot deal with non-compliance. If you're buying digital ads to run experiments, at that point also you need GST registrations and then quarterly or monthly maintenance and even nil returns if you have to file. It's all a burden, right? Uh, and I know how many entrepreneurs get affected by this, right? If you're on the edge or you don't have the right capitalization, like the risk taking appetite and like so all of this has an impact, right? Every regulatory effort, paperwork or like what have you. So over there, like e-commerce has no minimum, right? For example, on GST registration and GST compliance, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair to startups. I don't think it's in the right spirit. It feels dated, like in the age of pandemic, in the age of like rapid digital transformation of the country, the advent of geo, advent of like smartphone proliferation everywhere. Digital is the way of life, right? Like now, what cutoff, what boundary conditions, how do you solve for that? That's the problem. Then the policymakers should aggressively try to solve to encourage businesses to attack this because like it's too much work. It is too much work.
Because even a normal service provider maybe not earning even 2 lakh rupees per month, but he falls under it the moment he crosses that 160,000 limit, and then he will file CAs and chase CAs and file. It's kind of a burden. You're absolutely right, Archit, and we cover a lot of startups, so we often receive this feedback from them. So Ms. Kashiram, I will come back to you, and my question is in two parts. One is about the dispute resolution, and second is about the faceless assessment. So government wants to bring this new ideology of faceless assessment so that they can help to resolve the issues. So one is obviously how has been the dispute resolution with the GST, and what is your view on the faceless assessment?
So I'll first talk about faceless assessment. Okay.
Sure.
Faceless assessment, yes, seems to be good idea, but the only problem which we feel there will be the guys who are on the other side should be knowledgeable and should have the entire background of all kind of problems which
Right.
the industries can face, because in income tax we are facing that issue currently. Because faceless has started, we are having our first faceless assessment, but the people on the other side are not up to the mark to understand all the complications. So that is something which they will have to take care, otherwise it might be a problem. And like once it is faceless, we don't know what to do, and if the other guy is not understanding the issues, then
Right.
how it will get resolved is a question mark which all of us are thinking. And in income tax, since we are already facing that, we are a little bit worried about it.
So face to face, you are unable to explain.
At least
How will
we
you
can explain and we can use paper pen
Yes.
to jot down things, but
Yes.
how in the faceless we will do? But see,
Okay.
COVID has taught us everything. Now, if that communication is smooth, if the other side person is knowledgeable, yes, it is a very good and great idea.
Okay.
But it has to be implemented in its true sense. That's very critical.
Right. Can you quickly also add the dispute resolution part?
So dispute resolution depend, it's state by state, different experiences from our side.
Mhm.
So some states, the experience is really very good. And in some states, it is difficult to handle.
Okay. What about you, Mr.?
And my
Okay.
counterparts are not seeing same problems in same state also. So
Right.
it all depends on the people is what I understand. Like
Okay.
if I have problem in Uttar Pradesh, need not be everybody has problem in Uttar Pradesh.
Hmm.
So that is something which is what is visible currently.
Okay. Mr. Arunachalam, what is your view on the dispute resolution? And also, I want you to add more on the cost of GST filing. Like we said, that the startups and entrepreneurs are facing a lot of issues, and they are also facing a lot of challenges in terms of justifying the cost for the filing. Are you okay with it?
In fact, Amul, let's look at this as a value chain, right? Rather than looking at cost of filing. The way how do you want to visualize? We are looking at a digital India in many forms, right? This cost of filing can entirely, I'm not looking at a single parameter into it. There is a cost of compliance, which includes filing, which includes assessment, which includes dispute resolution, which includes firms that you need to consult to do it. Eventually, I wouldn't look at this as a single bucket to see how do you reduce the cost of filing. Can I leverage digitization and ensure that all these can be automated in one bucket, which will eventually benefit the end user and also will help the government. Now, coming to the dispute resolution, I think in the GST regime, we all know that as to sizable revenue gets locked up, and it is for almost many years. And people were eventually looking at GST as a panacea to this when it came in. Today, still, it's early days. I think disputes are ongoing in terms of multiple things. If some of the things that you have to look at it, there's no harmonization between the center and state in terms of the courts. Divergent interpretation becomes the hardcore reason for it. And also, how do you handle the dispute resolution mechanism in different states? Considering there is no one standard way and every state has got its own way of handling this. Eventually, I would see we need to take a cutoff, and the moment we get into a seamless transition, which is what we talked about, the one nation, one tax base. I don't think so. If we close the old disputes that is there with a clear resolution of what is the outcome, and then on future, if there is clarification, it's not as much as we had in the earlier regime of VAT or the respective state general taxes. This is much more simpler. I have a lot of hope that this will also go away in the long run.
Noted your points, I think, and the time is up, but I will take one question with all of you. That is going to be another, you have partly mentioned all of you, but let me put it this way. And Mr. Vikams, I will start with you. The question is, what is the next turning point that you would like to see in the GST journey going ahead?
See, there are a few things which should be ironed out. Number one, they should go back to the drawing board, as I said.
Correct.
Extremely important. Invoice matching is the core of GST, as far as input rate is concerned, and that must be put in place at the earliest, so that you don't burden the people who are not given input rate, but you actually catch the person who's not, paying taxes or not complying when he's collected the GST from you. So that's point number one. Point number two is that even on the drawing board, when they envisage GST, they had said that we will rate each and every supplier. That has not started. I don't know for what reason. You could give proper rating so that when I want to engage a supplier, I can look at what the rating, his compliance, this thing, and I may not engage him if I feel that, he will not comply and he will break the chain, or I may have problems in claiming input rate. That's point number two. Point number three, you just mentioned about litigation.
Yes.
Now, the tribunal under the GST Act has not been formed, which is a very sorry state of affairs. I don't mince words. It should be done at the earliest, because dispute resolution under any tax law is the core. Ultimately, if some problem arises, you don't have to go to High Court, file a writ petition, spend money, timeless efforts. You should have a proper mechanism where your resolution takes place, which is tribunal, which is envisaged under the GST law. But no, it's not been formed yet. No members are appointed. Nothing. It has not started, which is a very sorry state of affairs. So I think these four, fundamentals of GST should be put in place properly. That's the turnaround which I would like to see. And secondly, as I said, make it more and more, refined. The GST should be like petroleum, for example. It's a very big thing. We think it's a small thing, but it's an extremely big. People are consuming gases, oils into industry for which credits are not given. You don't get seamless credits. So that's also value addition on which GST should be there. You should be able to claim input rates. So bring that also immediately into GST. Thereafter, my dream would be that bring electricity duty, for example, or other indirect taxes. Luxury tax, of course, has gone, but other indirect taxes which are still out, for example, stamp duty, one can even think of that. That bring also that under the GST. So you have consumed so many indirect taxes. Dream would be that much more. Bring it under one platform. And most important is that the law, a lot has been talked about technology. Now, my personal view is that the law must follow technology now. They should first have technology in place, and thereafter they should make the law or amend the law. It's the other way around now,
Right.
Things were mentioned about the law was changed, and for 9 months that facility was not available on technology platform. Now that's not good at all. So the entire, technology platform should be made stronger and have seamless, and even the data which the government today has, both under the GST, under income tax, under various filings, digital data, that can be really, harnessed by the government, and that can be used for the benefit of taxpayers as well. Give you an example. In every income tax assessment, they will ask you that give me a GST reconciliation. Your turnover in GST is X, your turnover in income tax is Y.
Income tax.
Reconcile it. Now, why can't this reconciliation also be built into the system itself, so that you don't have to wreck your brains and waste your time and energy in doing it? And as Neetu very rightly pointed out, training of the officers is extremely important. Number one, training of the officers. Number two, make them accountable.
Right.
Today, what we lack is accountability of officers. I'm sorry to say this, but this is a reality of life. That they pass any stupid orders and nothing happens to them. But you suffer as an industry, you suffer as a taxpayer, you suffer. So why that? Make them also accountable. Maybe you make a mistake once.
Right.
Everybody makes a mistake. I'm not saying that. But if you continuously make a mistakes, in several cases, then such kind of officers should be made accountable. There should be some penalty on them as well. Somebody monitoring and seeing what is the quality of assessments you're doing, what is the quality of work you're doing, and punish those officers as well. That will, bring in great confidence in the industry as well, that they'll be treated fairly by the GST officers. And on the point of, faceless assessment, Neetu has very rightly said that this is an initial, experimentation which has started with the income tax law. But I believe if that is rationalized, then the old excise regime, I'm sure Neetu must be remembering the old excise regime where, officers used to come and sit in your office. And, take data in your office and virtually stop your work, your ongoing work, and you have to attend all the time. So all that should go, and it should be made, and technology should overtake everything ultimately, because you're capturing all the data. Technology
Right.
is able to, intelligently find out what the evasion is, where the revenue loss is, and try and plug those and go heavily after those taxpayers who are actually evading tax. But at the same time, give a pat to the taxpayers who are complying with the law, who are doing all compliances, who are paying the taxes on time. Give them a pat. They don't need any incentive, but at least give them a pat and appreciation. So those are my thoughts on, the turning point of GST.
I think those are the great turning points actually that you mentioned. On the litigation point, I think there are always a lot of arguments that even in one case, if High Court has also passed one judgment, why the tribunal, the officers don't follow it? They will again go with the same case, and again the case will go to High Court, and the years are gone there. But again, Mr. Gupta, Vikramsinh has pitched, and everybody has pitched technology a lot. So what are the next turning points in the GST journey, specifically in terms of the technology that you see?
I think I strongly concur with many of the points Mr. Vikramsinh said, and it's tough to follow him with that. Like on the technology side, I have a couple of points of view. One is, I think overall the electronic invoicing opportunity which we are taking can, if implemented correctly and in full, can really simplify compliances, because what you're doing is you're taking data at the origination point, and then if automatically you can produce, the systems can produce correct results for the taxpayer, it can reduce like the stress, it can reduce a lot of because then what you are going to supply at the end of the month, that is already covered. What your vendors are going to write about you is already covered. Now you can make decisions on top of it. The second thing which and Mr. Vikramsinh touched upon it in the second order effects of technology and data. Some of the effects he touched upon is how the different systems, income tax systems, GST systems speak to each other. That is, I think, number one and must be done. I think the second thing which is being envisaged and talked about is the overall like data-driven lending, data-driven financing, and multiple other things which can happen in the supply chain now, with electronic invoicing and GST data becoming a system of record around behavior patterns, which Mr. Vikramsinh touched upon a little bit with vendor scoring. But if you have the electronic invoices and which have been validated, can they become a unit of invoice discounting factoring bill which came out from the recently? So some of these opportunities are there, and as a nation they can strengthen us and take us from like working capital gaps which have emerged due to COVID and other scenarios. And overall, as a, I mean, credit-starved country, this can really impact. So, I mean, these are some of the technological things we envisage in the future. Like, how does the entire ecosystem communicate better? Invoices flow digitally between businesses. Can paperwork go down? Can cost of even doing business go down because of this national infrastructure, both from a perspective of automation and the perspective of financing? So these are some of my future-looking second-order thoughts.
Okay, valuable points, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Arunachalam.
In my way, I think pretty simple. Mr. Vikram say and friend has captured almost everything that we need to do. One thing on top of it is probably unification of systems. There may not be a scenario where we'll have this multiple system that we have today for return filing, e-invoicing, or e-way bill generation. Instead, if there is a single upload that is possible into a consolidated data portal, that will actually save a lot of time, ensure that there is one truth in terms of data accuracy and the final information and decision making that we can make out of it. That I think could be the next big one. Obviously, the other one, which is pretty, I think it is simpler and easier to implement, is integrating the direct and indirect tax. If that information flows there, it'll ease a lot of pain that business go through today.
Okay, and Ms. Kashiramka?
So I think most of it is covered. The only one which we have talked in the earlier, some other question was one return for the entire company. I think that is something which for me will be a biggest turning point. So I can file return globally for all the states together. I think that is the dream which I want.
Okay.
The GST too.
Valuable points from all of you. I hope the GST Council and the Government of India watches this session. We'll also write about it far more aggressively. Thank you so much, Mr. Vikamsi, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Arunachalam, and Ms. Kashiramka for sharing your thoughts at ETCA for Turning Point and talking about the future of GST, whether it's a mystery of mirage. Thank you so much for your participation.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for putting your point of view. Indeed, very thought-provoking session. Let's move on to more such interesting sessions. Stay tuned.